looking and watching what's been going on with various campaign groups, and when we put our heads together we came up with this, a national march against the badger cull. So thank you very much for supporting us. We'll be going about their natural business as they have done for at least 250,000 years. Will be shot by marksmen with no experience of shooting free-running badgers in the chest in an experimental method, the humaneness of which will be judged on the noise the badger makes as it is dying. And we fear many will crawl away, die of slow, painful death from injuries, starvation and infection. It will not even be known if any of these animals have TB at the time of shooting. Our presence in the cull zones can stop this. There are already groups working in those areas who can be contacted about peaceful protest and non-violent direct action. Check out Gloucestershire Against the Badger Shooting online.
Those pesky badgers give TB to cows, and cows really suffer, and badgers really suffer with TB, and the absolute best way to stop all that suffering is to slaughter all the badgers. Well, we know that's a load of horse poop. Cows suffer terribly, and it's not just because of TB. About a quarter of the herd in the UK are lame at any one time. So if all the badgers are slaughtered, those cows are not going to go back to dancing in the fields. Their feet are just too sore. And even if their feet weren't so sore that they could barely walk, most of them are suffering mastitis, an infection of their udders that causes severe, excruciating pain. But if they weren't oozing pus from their udders, would they then go back to dancing in the fields? Well, probably not, since increasingly they're being incarcerated inside filthy, disgusting, zero-grazing sheds. They don't even get outside at all. But if they could get outside, would they go back to dancing in the fields? Well, no, because they're exhausted. They've been repeatedly raped, they've been repeatedly milked, and they're absolutely exhausted to the point where they're off to slaughter at the age of 5 or 6 years old. More than that, emotionally, they're so damaged from their calves being taken from them and shot in the head that I don't suppose cows will ever feel like dancing in the fields. Strangely, farmers don't really want to talk about these kinds of issues. They don't want to talk about lameness and mastitis and calves being shot in the head and dairy cows ending up on the slaughter line. And so they direct our attention instead to TB and badgers. You see, badgers are not just badgers. They're scapegoats, and they're also something of a red herring. We know this government is partial to killing wildlife, right? They want to bring back hunting in defiance of public opinion. This government is out of touch and is out of control. It doesn't care about badgers. It doesn't care about humaneness. We already heard from WASP that they're going to judge humaneness on how the badgers scream for their lives. That's what this government is. But while we focus on the badgers' suffering, and we will be focusing on it, and they will be suffering, we must not forget for a moment the silent suffering of the dairy cows, in whose name this cull is being conducted.
So thank you all of you who turned up here today to express your disgust at the government's seemingly unstoppable commitment to killing as a solution for the problem which is crippling livestock across the country. We have a government in bed with an NFU leadership similarly welded to the idea of the massacre of thousands of mostly healthy animals, seemingly unable to hear the words of the scientific community that it will not work, deaf to the cries of hundreds of thousands of Brits who have signed the petition, and in contempt of the will of Parliament, which at the end of a 6-hour debate last November voted overwhelmingly against the cull. You have to remember, a few thousand years have gone by since badgers were here. They were here before us. Just a few years ago, there was another march in London. Some of you may remember when thousands of country dwellers assembled to protest against the then government's treatment of the countryside, the destruction of green belts, the closing of country communities like post offices, the lack of internet facilities, etc. The hideous irony is that what they got after protesting in this manner in the 2011 election was an arrogant, callous, out-of-touch administration who have done more to ruin the countryside in this country than any government in living memory. This war against the badgers, against the badger killers, is not over. It's hardly begun, because this is a fight for the very lives of 100,000, at least, innocent animals. But even more than that, it's a fight against the old-fashioned, bloody-minded, ignorant attitude that human beings and money and political power are all that matter. It's a fight for the rights of the other creatures on this planet. It's a right for their very right to live in these islands. But this mess that British farming is in, by and large, is not the fault of the average, decent, hard-working farmer. It's the fault of bad leadership over the years. In the corridors of Europe, the image of British farming, as they discuss it, is not very pleasant to hear. They regard us as cheap and sloppy. They point out that Britain is the only country which has a serious TB problem, and that this is no accident. I want to speak to the farmers now, because I know some of them are listening. There are many of you farmers who are very supportive of our views and working with us towards vaccination. There are many more who are nervous of even speaking to us because of pressure from their colleagues. But I want to speak to every farmer, every tenant farmer, and landowners of all levels, especially those of you who have put your faith in this badger cull. We believe here that British farmers have been let down by their leadership. They've been let down by an NFU over the years which didn't look after the small farmer and thought it knew better than the European guidelines. An NFU which restocked carelessly after the foot and mouth outbreak. An NFU which has gone along with the incorrect application of a scandalously unreliable skin test to take reactive cows out of herds, and failed to enforce proper movement controls of cattle and decent biosafe husbandry. Right now, the European Commission, so often used as an excuse by British governments, is offering to help us move towards validation and licensing of our cattle vaccine, based on BCG, the same stuff which cured our children years ago, and of the essential DIVA test, which discriminates between an animal which is vaccinated and an animal which is infected. They are ready to go. It will take probably 10 years, but it can happen. But even now, Patterson, Heath, Cameron and co are refusing to prioritize it. They're standing around, they're striding around, telling us vaccination is years away and wasting everybody's time with a cull which cannot solve the problem. Give us a minute, mate. This cull cannot even make a significant dent in bovine TB in the next 10 years. Do not believe those claims about Ireland, about New Zealand, about Australia and white-tailed deer, etc. in Michigan. The statistics have been massaged to produce the answer they want. Culling of wildlife has never eradicated TB in any country of the world. Vaccination of our national herd is probably realistically 10 years away. Does that sound like a long time? Does that sound like we shouldn't be waiting? We must do something now, right? Surely we must do something right now. But the something that this government has decided to do and has sold to farmers has been shown by science to be ineffective. It has been rejected by Parliament. It's unacceptable to nigh on 250,000 people who have signed our petition on the government's own website. Patterson has now admitted that culling this whole bloody mess will be going on for the next 25 years. So how does 10 years sound now? 10 years sounds all right to me. At the end of this misery of 25 years, when the farmers will still have to be paying for their culling, and we the taxpayers will still be compensating them, there will still be breakdowns. TB will still be there. Farmers will still be suffering. Cows will still be suffering. And the badgers pursuing this course will be a pitiful remnant, a tragic ghost of a species which has been in Britain since long before we were. That's the future if you go with this cull.
Stop the cull!
Stop the cull! Whoa!
Where's the badger?
This cull is a cheap, shoddy pig in a poke, offered dishonestly to farmers as a solution to their misery. It will fail and possibly damage farming's relationship with the public forever. We offer a solution, vaccination, and we're already cooperating in community-led vaccination schemes. People of the UK, do not let this atrocity happen. Do not let it happen. We will win this war for decency. It may take time, but we will prevail. The other good news that we have, strangely enough, was in the Independent yesterday. Now, the Independent up to now has been pro-Cull, and it's very significant that they've changed their minds. What's even more significant is that they've uncovered the information that the one piece of evidence which might have convinced people that the Cull was still worth doing has now disappeared. It now emerges that this Cull will cost the taxpayer more than it will save it in terms of what it can achieve, even at best. So the last evidence, the last reason for culling is gone. And I ask you to stick to our guns. Please, let's all stay together. We all started out together, we will all end together. We will have a decent Britain one day, and we will have a Britain in which animals are treated with respect. Thank you so much.